I call the honourable member Chester Burrows.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I rise to take a call in this budget debate and want to place on record my grateful thanks to the support and encouragement of the retiring member, the Honourable John Carter, for the help that he's been to me personally as a junior member of this House, previously as a candidate in several elections, as a fellow member of the parliamentary rugby team, and as an all-round good mate. The House will be the poorer for seeing him head away from here and off to the Cook Islands in his new role as the High Commissioner to the Cook Islands. We're grateful for the legacy that he's left within the National Party, particularly within the Northland electorate. And so our thoughts and our cares go with him and with Leonie. But tonight I want to speak about the recent budget and the plight of young children in our country, especially those who are the most vulnerable. And I'm pleased to see that young children in care have been given some significant encouragement and some ongoing support. The budget directs money to young kids in the care of the state, and I want to underline the huge responsibility we have as the state to care for the young who are far too vulnerable and far too at risk to leave in their own homes. And as a person who has removed children from their homes, I can witness to the agony of making the decision as an agent of the state to remove a child from that care, the care of his parents, his or her parents, knowing that those parents love that child as much as they know how to love, knowing that they care as much as they know how to care, and knowing that in many respects they lack the skills necessary to be able to raise a child in the manner to which it deserves to be raised. And when one has been confronted with the hurt and the pain while recognising as a parent the agony of what it must be to have your children taken from you, you remove those children only as a last resort. We have about 5,000 children in the care of the state at present, and until now we've done very little to understand what their drivers and their inhibitors and their risk factors are. And this budget provides $43 million to assess medically and mentally and educationally the children that are in the care of the state. And of those we did assessments on, and this is only those with severe enough behavioural problems that have flagged the need to do that assessment, because until the provisions of this budget, it isn't something that we do as a matter of routine. We've found some horrifying home truths. 65% of those children had emotional or behavioural problems. 41% had mental disorders. 41% needed dental health treatment that had been withheld from them. 37% couldn't hear properly. Even without assessment, we knew the plain and obvious terrible truths that 50% of children have parents with drug or alcohol problems, that 1 in 4 have a mother with a criminal conviction, that 1 in 5 have a parent with a mental disorder, that only half of our children in care ate breakfast before they were placed into the care of the state, that half of all youth suicides in this country, in this God's own country, are inflicted on themselves by children in care, killing themselves because we, the state, have failed to offer sufficient hope for those young people to see that their crack at life has got a chance of success. It's not a surprise to look at the stats. A child who has a parent who has been to jail has 7 times greater chance of growing up and going to jail themselves. A child who has 2 parents who have had a custodial sentence has 15 times greater chance of growing up and going to jail. But a child growing up in the care of the state has 17 times more chance of growing up and going to jail. And the national government does not accept failure on that scale. It rejects it, and it has provided in this budget the ability to bother about the kids who are in care, to care enough to make those assessments, to find out what those drivers of their situation is, the inhibitors to their progression. 2 weeks ago, the Social Services Select Committee took its inquiry into child and youth offending to Australia as part of the exchange program, and we met with several government agencies and 16 NGOs over 5 days. Australia struggles with a similar risk factors and indicators of failure that we do in New Zealand. They fail their Indigenous people, especially the young, in similar ways, and they are gradually waking up to the fact that the ways of the past are failing those most vulnerable in their care. In New South Wales and in Northern Territory, 100% of Aboriginal children in the care of the state will go on to go to jail. You would think that given the wealth and the resources, the responsibilities of the state, that a child committed to the care of the state would be better placed to succeed, to live with more hope, more aspiration, surrounded by more care and more protection, better health outcomes and better socialisation than another child, because in spite of the rough start that they have had, the focus of the state agencies is concentrated upon them. But it isn't. In fact, it puts them in a greater risk of danger. It places less protective factors around them and opens them up to even greater risk factors. And I can say at this time, thank goodness for a national government, that the outcomes of children and who are in the homes of the state that can look forward under a continuing national government to better care and better situations, better prospects than what they have until now. National is confronting child abuse. We're encouraging New Zealand to debate how we nurture and protect our children. Our Green Paper on children will invite Kiwis to have their say before forming a children's action plan, helping foster children to get home for life, support to help parents and foster children into permanent care. And last year, we saw the launch of the Home for Life package by our Minister of Social Development, the Honourable Paula Bennett, which gave those parents, those foster parents who were prepared to commit long-term to young people in their care, the certainty of support from the state, the fact that they wouldn't then be cast off and left alone. The support was not only financial, but it was also emotional, and it was ongoing in that they would be able to call back to the state at any time. It ensured that in place with things such as respite care to ensure that they got the breaks they needed to, so that they could gather themselves and regroup, because the commitment they had made to these young people was ongoing and forever as far as that young life was concerned. In health, there is more maternity support with a focus for first-time mothers, 24-hour Plunket line fully funded, and we have seen Plunket line under threat under previous governments. And we need to acknowledge this one fact, Mr Speaker, and that is this: that in this modern world that we live in, we can identify the at-risk fetus. And we've quoted it in this House before, I've done it myself. We recognise the at-risk fetus. We know that the mother of a young child who grows up and to fail in all those areas of social policy, a young child who grows up and goes to jail, we know that the mother was pregnant at a very young age. She was pregnant 3 times before she was 20, probably to different parents. We knew that she left school with no school qualifications. She is either working on the lowest wage or she is on a benefit. We know that she smokes tobacco. We know that she is dependent on alcohol and probably some other substance. We know that she has no positive role models acting in the role of a parent or a mentor as far as parenting goes. We know that if we can identify Dad, he comes from the same demographic. And we know that about 3 years ago, this world, with all its collective wisdom, landed a spaceship on Mars, and yet it tends to do nothing about the early identification of those young people we know who are most at risk, and thank God that this government, through this budget, is doing something about it. And I'm very proud to be part of that government.